Sometimes, the only family you have left is the one you choose in the middle of nowhere. Vera Langley learned that truth at 62. Alone in a mountain cabin with two wolf dogs and a lifetime of secrets she would never tell, she lived deep in the Sawtooth Mountains, miles from anyone. Twice a year, she would walk into town for coffee and ammunition. Then, she would disappear back into the trees. The locals whispered about her past, but no one ever asked questions. Then, one winter night, three armed men on the run from the law kicked in her door during a blizzard. They thought they'd found an easy target. They were wrong. What happens when desperate criminals corner a woman who stopped running from her past decades ago? Before we get back to it, let us know where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow I have something very special in store for you. 6 months before three desperate men broke down her door, Vera Langley made her semi-annual pilgrimage from the high country down to Timber Ridge. The town sat on the edge of the Sawtooth wilderness like a reluctant guardian, neither welcoming the mountains nor turning its back on them. Population 273. That was, if you counted the Hendricks twins twice, which most people did, since they never seemed to be in the same place at the same time. Vera's boots crunched on the gravel of the main street just after dawn. She carried a canvas pack over one shoulder, heavy with winter pelts, marten, fox, and one exceptional bobcat hide she'd been saving. Trailing her, maintaining a respectful distance of 20 paces, Ghost and Smoke moved like liquid silver and shadow. The male, Ghost, had a coat the color of fresh snow in moonlight. Smoke, his sister, was as dark as the spaces between the stars. They were not pets. Vera had never used the word, not even in her own mind. They were companions, partners, a kind of family that didn't require paperwork or promises. The general store was on the corner where Main Street ended and turned into a dirt track leading back into the wilderness. Ben Hollis had run the place for 40 years, taking over from his father, who'd run it for 40 years before that. The bell over the door announced her arrival, with a rusty jingle that hadn't changed since 1952. Vera set her pack on the counter, with a heavy thud. Ben opened it without ceremony, examining the pelts with the practiced eye of someone who'd been trading in mountain goods since before Vera was born. His fingers traced the bobcat fur with something close to reverence. "This is fine work, real fine. Winter was good to you up there." "The animals came heavy," Vera said. "I can give you 300 for the lot. 400, if you'll take half in store credit." Vera considered. Her needs were simple, predictable. 400. I'll take coffee, ammunition, and lamp oil, the usual. Ben began pulling items from the shelves behind him. He moved slowly, but with the efficiency of long practice. 5 pounds of dark roast, ground coffee. 3 boxes of .308 Winchester for the rifle. 2 boxes of .45 ACP for the handgun she kept but never mentioned. 4 glass bottles of lamp oil, each carefully wrapped in old newspaper. While he gathered her order, Vera walked to the window. Ghost and Smoke were lying in the morning sun on the boardwalk, perfectly still, perfectly aware of everything around them. A couple walking by gave them a wide berth, the woman grabbing her husband's arm and whispering something Vera couldn't hear but could easily imagine. "People still talk, you know," Ben said, his voice low. Vera turned to him. "People always talk." "Louise Kemper swears you used to work for the CIA. Says she saw a documentary once about female agents in the Cold War, and one of them looked just like you." Louise Kemper thinks the fluoride in the water is a mind control experiment. Ben chuckled, wrapping the bottles of lamp oil with extra care. True enough, but you have to admit, you don't exactly fit the profile of a common mountain hermit. Vera didn't reply. She had learned long ago that silence answered more questions than words ever could, usually in ways that satisfied the asker without revealing anything of substance. Ben placed everything in a sturdy box, adding a few extra items Vera hadn't requested. A new bar of soap, a tin of tobacco, a small jar of honey. Extras, he said before she could protest. For being my easiest customer. She accepted with a nod. Kindness, true kindness, was rare enough that to refuse it felt like a small sin. Next trip in about 6 months? Ben asked. Unless I run out of something. You take care up there, Vera. Winter's coming on strong this year. Old man Jessup says his bones are aching more than they have in a decade. And his bones never lie about the weather. Vera offered a small, rare smile that softened the hard lines of her face. I'll manage. I expect you will. Ben hesitated, then added, If you need anything, day or night, you know where to find me. She met his eyes and saw the genuine concern there. Ben Hollis was a good man, in a world that didn't always reward goodness. I know. Thank you. Outside, Ghost and Smoke rose as she approached, falling into step beside her without a command. She packed the box into her rucksack, carefully redistributing the weight. The walk back to her cabin would take the better part of the day, longer if she took the high route, as she often did. Fewer trails meant fewer chances of running into other people, and that suited her just fine. The cabin stood in a clearing 12 miles from Timber Ridge as the crow flies, closer to 18 by the winding path Vera walked. She had found the place 7 years ago, half ruined and forgotten, not marked on any map she'd ever seen. 3 months of hard labor had made it livable. 7 years of patient maintenance had made it a home. It was a simple structure. One main room with a sleeping alcove, a stone fireplace that drew well, and windows placed to catch the light without revealing her presence to anyone passing by. Not that anyone ever passed by. The logs were chinked tight against the wind. The roof was sound, and the door was solid oak with a crossbar that would stand against anything short of an organized assault. She'd built a small shed 30 yards from the cabin to store supplies she didn't need immediate access to. Traps, extra hides, tools, and other things she kept wrapped in oilcloth and didn't think about unless she had to. The shed looked as weathered and unremarkable as the cabin, which was exactly the point. Her daily routine had the comfortable predictability of a ritual. She woke before dawn, checked her trap lines, and tended to what needed tending. Ghost and Smoke roamed wide during these morning excursions, always within earshot, but following their own paths through the forest. They were hunters by nature, and she never tried to suppress that. She simply made sure they understood the boundaries. No livestock from the valley below, no approaching hikers or campers. They learned fast, or perhaps they'd always known. Sometimes Vera suspected the dogs understood more than she gave them credit for. Afternoons were for maintenance. Firewood always needed splitting. The clearing needed tending. Gear needed cleaning, sharpening, mending. Her hands stayed busy, which kept her mind from wandering down paths she had sealed off years ago. The nights belonged to lamplight and silence. She had books, 24 of them, traded with Ben or found in the cabin when she arrived. She had read them all multiple times. Sometimes she wrote in a leather-bound journal, careful observations of the weather and wildlife, but also thoughts she couldn't stop herself from recording. The journal was her confession and her testament, though she had no idea who would ever read it. The wolf dogs slept in the cabin with her, ghost near the door, smoke by the hearth. They were better than any alarm system, attuned to shifts in sound or scent that Vera's human senses missed. More than once, she'd woken to find them tense and alert, only to hear a moose moving through the clearing or a bear passing at a respectful distance. She had raised them from pups, found abandoned after their mother was shot by a rancher protecting his calves. 4 pups in the den, 3 already starved. Ghost and Smoke had been close to death, small enough to fit in the pockets of her jacket. She had fed them with an eyedropper, kept them warm against her body, and watched them grow into the magnificent animals they were now. They were the first creatures in a very long time she had allowed herself to love without reservation. They asked nothing of her but food, purpose, and her presence. They gave her loyalty, companionship, and a reason to stay alive on days when her past weighed on her like stones in deep water. On clear nights, she would sit on her porch and watch the stars. The wilderness had a quality of silence that city people could never quite understand. It was not the absence of sound, but the presence of natural sounds. The wind in the trees, the rush of water over stone, the small rustlings of nocturnal animals going about their business. She learned to read these sounds the way some people read newspapers, gathering information about the world around her without ever leaving her clearing. Sometimes in these quiet moments, the memories would slip past her defenses. Faces of people she had known, places she had been, missions that had seemed so clear and necessary at the time. She had spent 15 years running operations in places that didn't officially exist, for causes that were explained in careful euphemisms. She had been good at it, better than most, which was why they kept sending her back, until the day they sent her to kill someone who didn't deserve to die. And she made a choice that cost her everything but her life. She didn't regret it. Even now, sitting in her wilderness exile with a past she could never fully escape, she did not regret it. But she carried the weight of it, all the same. A responsibility she could not set down, no matter how far she ran. The compass she kept on a leather cord around her neck was a reminder of that. Military grade, with Cyrillic markings etched on the back. A souvenir from a mission in Chechnya, where everything had gone wrong, and she had barely made it out. She kept it not as a trophy, but as a reminder that even the finest navigation doesn't always show you the right way. Sometimes, you have to choose your own direction, regardless of what the instrument says. She touched it now, standing on the porch as dusk settled. Ghost and Smoke settled at her feet. Tomorrow would be like today, and the day after would be the same. She had built a life of deliberate monotony, finding peace in its predictability. She had no way of knowing that in 6 months, 3 desperate men would shatter that peace, and in doing so drag her back into the violence she had spent 7 years trying to leave behind. But tonight, the stars were clear, the air was cold and clean, and she was safe in the home she had built with her own 2 hands. For now, it was enough. The storm came from the north, 3 days earlier than anyone had predicted. It came on furious and vengeful, as only early winter storms can. Vera saw it building in the clouds. She felt it in the restlessness of the dogs. She smelled it on the wind, a sharp scent of snow still miles away, but closing fast. She spent the morning preparing. She stacked extra firewood inside by the stove, filled water containers, checked and sealed the windows. She brought the last of the fresh meat in from the cold shed. Ghost and Smoke watched her with an unusual intensity. aware that something was changing. By afternoon, the first flakes began to fall. Within an hour, the world had disappeared into a whiteout, the wind howling around the cabin with a voice that sounded almost human. Vera settled in with a book and a cup of coffee, the lamp lit beside her chair. Storms like this could last for days. She had everything she needed to wait it out. She did not hear the men approach. The storm masked their sound completely. The first indication of their presence was Ghost's low growl, a rumble that started deep in his chest and built into something primal. Smoke was already on her feet, hackles raised, her attention fixed on the door. Vera set her book down and rose, moving with the careful precision of someone who had long ago learned not to waste motion. She crossed the room to where her walking stick leaned against the wall. Hand-carved rowan wood, innocent-looking, except for the lead weight she herself had set into its core. Her rifle was mounted over the fireplace, but she left it there. Better not to escalate, not until she knew what she was facing. The door shuddered under a heavy blow. Once. Twice. On the third strike, the crossbar splintered, and the door flew open with a roar, unleashing a blast of snow and icy wind. 3 figures stumbled into her cabin, like men fleeing hell itself. They were armed. She saw it instantly. 2 pistols and a shotgun, all drawn, all pointed her way, though with the unsteady aim of exhausted men. They were decades younger than she was, dressed for the city, not the mountains, and they looked as if they'd been running for days. "Don't move," the one in front said, the one with dark hair and sharp features. He tried for a tone of command, but his voice cracked with cold and fatigue. Vera didn't move. She stood in the center of the cabin, her walking stick in hand, Ghost and Smoke flanking her, teeth bared. The scene held for a long moment, the wind howling through the open doorway, driving snow into her home. "Close the door," Vera said, her voice calm and firm. "You're letting the heat out." The man blinked, startled by her lack of fear. Behind him, a younger one, little more than a boy, really, shoved the door shut. The sudden absence of wind made the silence in the cabin feel heavy, dangerous. "Who are you?" the leader asked. "I live here." "Who are you?" "None of your business," the third man snapped. He was stockier, meaner looking than the others, with a natural violence in his eyes. "You alone?" "Just me and the dogs." The stocky one laughed, a humorless sound. "Dogs, Cole? We got ourselves a dog lady." "Shut up, Ray," the leader, Cole, said, his eyes studying Vera more carefully now. She could see him trying to categorize her, to fit her into some box that made sense. An old woman alone in the mountains should be scared. She should be pleading. She should be easy. Vera was none of those things. It confused him. "We need shelter," Cole said finally. "The storm's too bad to keep moving." "You can stay the night. You leave in the morning." Ray stepped forward, raising his pistol. "Listen here, Grandma." Ghost launched himself forward, a 4-foot leap stopped only by Vera's raised hand. The move was so sudden, so controlled, that all 3 men flinched back, their guns swinging toward the wolf dog. Smoke moved to intercept, placing himself between Vera and the weapons. "Point those guns away from my dogs," Vera said, her voice dangerously quiet, "or I won't hold them back." Ray kept his pistol raised. "They're animals. We'll shoot them if they come at us." "You'll try." Vera let the words hang in the air. "You might get one. You won't get both. And then you'll have bigger problems than you already do." Cole raised a hand. signaling for Ray to lower his weapon. He was smarter than his companion, reading the situation more clearly. Look, we don't want trouble. We just need to get out of this storm. In the morning, we'll be gone. You'll never see us again. Vera watched them. She could see the desperation, the fear, behind the bravado. The youngest one wouldn't meet her eyes, shame written all over his face. On the floor near his feet, partially visible beneath his coat, she saw the edge of a canvas duffel bag. Bank logo, she thought. And what could be dried blood on the fabric? She knew then what they were, what they'd done, why they were running. One night, she said, you sleep in that corner, away from my things. You don't touch anything. You don't threaten me or the dogs again. At dawn, you're gone. Agreed? Cole nodded slowly. Agreed. And put those guns away. Inside my house, I'm the only one who's armed. Ray started to protest, but Cole cut him off. Do it. Reluctantly, they holstered their weapons. Vera didn't put hers away. She simply set her walking stick within easy reach and went to secure the door, working around the splintered gash they'd made in it. She'd have to fix that later, assuming there was a later. She stoked the fire, adding another log. The men were drawn to the heat like moths, shivering as the deep chill began to leave their bones. The youngest, no more than 20, she guessed, looked at her with something that might have been gratitude. There's venison stew in the pot, Vera said. It's still warm. Help yourselves. They ate like starving animals, barely pausing to breathe. She watched them from her chair. Ghost and smoke settled at her feet, but they were still alert, still watching. The dogs hadn't relaxed, and neither had she. After they'd eaten, Cole approached her. He moved carefully, keeping his hands visible. Thank you, he said, for the food. Don't thank me yet. The night isn't over. No, he agreed. It isn't. He studied her face in the lamplight. You don't seem scared. You should be. Most people would be. 3 armed men break into their home. They'd be terrified. I'm not most people. He gave a slight smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. I'm starting to see that. What's your name? Vera. I'm Cole. That's Ray, and the kid is Marcus. He paused. We're not here to hurt you, Vera. We just need to get through this storm. Then let's get through it. She rose and walked toward her sleeping alcove. I'm going to get some rest. I suggest you do the same. Morning comes early, and you've got a long walk ahead of you. The roads won't be passable for days after a storm like this. I hope you have good boots. She could see the realization dawning on his face. They hadn't thought that far ahead. They had run blindly, and now they were trapped. Get some sleep, she repeated, and don't even think about trying anything stupid. My dogs are light sleepers. She pulled the curtain across the entrance to the alcove and lay down on her cot, fully dressed, boots still on. Through a gap in the fabric, she could see the men settling in their assigned corner. Marcus, the youngest, glanced in her direction. Their eyes met for a moment, and she saw the weight of the choices that had brought him here etched on his face. Then he looked away, and she let the curtain fall closed. Lying in the darkness, she listened to the storm raging outside and the quiet movements of the dangerous men in her home. Ghost and Smoke positioned themselves between the alcove and the men. Good dogs. Sleep wouldn't come easy tonight, but she'd survived worse than 3 desperate criminals in a snowstorm. Much worse. The compass around her neck felt heavy against her skin, a reminder of all the times she'd been outnumbered, outgunned, on hostile ground with no backup and no way out. She'd survived all those times too. She just hoped she wouldn't have to kill anyone to survive this one. Vera woke before dawn, as she always did. The storm still howled outside, perhaps even stronger than before. The cabin held that particular silence of men trying to sleep while remaining alert to danger. She rose without a sound, pulled back the curtain, and found Ray awake, watching her, his hand resting on the pistol at his belt. "Morning," she said quietly. He didn't reply, just kept watching as she moved to poke the fire, add more logs, and put a pot of water on to boil. The domestic sounds seemed to relax him slightly. Cole and Marcus were still asleep, or pretending to be. She made coffee, the one true luxury in her isolated life. The scent filled the small cabin, rich and strong. Ray's expression softened at the aroma. "Want some?" Vera asked. He hesitated, then nodded. She poured 2 mugs, handed one to him, and kept the other for herself. They drank in silence as the fire grew stronger and gray. Weak light began to filter through the windows. "Storm's not letting up," Ray observed. "No, probably not for another day, maybe 2. He absorbed this with no visible reaction. "You really live out here all alone?" "I do." "No husband, no kids? Seems lonely." "It's quiet." She took a sip of her coffee. "What about you? Got a wife waiting somewhere wondering where you are?" Ray's jaw tightened. "Had one. Past tense." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She's better off." He studied Vera over the rim of his mug. "You're not what I expected when we broke in here." "What did you expect?" "Someone easier to scare, I guess. Someone who'd panic." He shook his head slowly. "But you looked at us like you were deciding if we were worth the trouble." "Are you?" He almost smiled. "Still don't know." Cole stirred, sitting up with a groan. His eyes found Vera immediately, tracking her as she began to prepare breakfast. Strips of venison, dried berries, and flatbread. Marcus woke last, looking around as if hoping the night before had been a nightmare. When he saw where he was, disappointment settled on his young face like a shadow. They ate together, an uneasy parody of companionship. The absurdity of it was not lost on her. "This storm holds much longer. You're going to run out of supplies feeding us all," Cole said. "I'll manage." "You're always this calm? Would you prefer I panic? Scream? Beg?" "I'd prefer some honest-to-God fear over whatever this is you're doing." Cole set his spoon down, his gaze sharp and intelligent. "You've been in situations like this before, haven't you?" Vera didn't answer. She stood and began clearing the plates. Ghost and Smoke lay near the door, watching the men with fixed attention. "Those aren't regular dogs," Ray said, following her gaze. "No, they're not." "What are they?" "Wolf hybrids." Marcus spoke for the first time since waking. "You raised them?" "I found them as pups. Their mother had been killed. They would have died." "So you saved them," Marcus said softly. "And now they protect you." "We protect each other." Vera returned to her chair, picking up the walking stick that was never far from her reach. "That's how family works." Cole stood and walked to the window, staring out at the whiteout. "We're stuck here until this blows over. And then what? You really think you can just send us on our way, and that'll be the end of it? That was the agreement we made. Agreements are made to be broken." That came from Ray, who was on his feet now, circling the cabin's interior, examining Vera's belongings with the practiced eye of someone cataloging assets. He paused at a small shelf where she kept a few personal items: a hand-carved bird, a smooth river stone, and a photograph in a simple, faded frame. Ray picked it up, and Vera felt a tightening in her chest. She kept her face neutral, but inside alarm bells were ringing. The photograph showed a younger Vera, perhaps in her late 30s, standing with 6 other people in full tactical gear. The background was nondescript, but 5 of the 7 faces had been carefully blacked out with a marker, leaving only Vera's face visible, and one other, a man beside her. "Playing soldier?" Ray asked, holding up the photo. Vera rose calmly, walked over, and took the photo from his hand with a firmness that allowed for no argument. "That's private." Looked military. Special forces, maybe. "It's private," she repeated, setting the frame back on its shelf. Ray watched her with a new kind of interest. "You were military?" "I was a lot of things, a long time ago." "Is that why you're not afraid of us?" Marcus asked, his voice almost a whisper. "I'm just trying to figure out what we're dealing with here," Ray shot back. "This old lady who lives alone in the mountains doesn't panic when we break down her door. She keeps wolf hybrids as pets, and she's got pictures of herself in tactical gear. It's not normal." "Normal is overrated," Vera replied. She returned to her chair, signaling the conversation was over. But now Cole was watching her too, reassessing everything. The harmless old woman was gone. In her place was something else entirely. "What did you do before you came out here?" "I lived a different life." "Doing what?" "Nothing that concerns you." "Everything about you is our business now," Cole told her calmly. "We're stuck here together, and I need to know if you're going to be a problem when this storm passes." Vera met his gaze squarely. "I won't be a problem, so long as you keep your word. You leave when the storm passes. I'll give you a head start before I report anything. As for who I'll report it to, Forest Service, Sheriff, whoever makes sense." A harsh, sarcastic laugh escaped Ray. "You really think we're just going to let you report us?" The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus paled, looking at Ray with something like horror. Cole's expression remained carefully neutral, but Vera saw his hand slide toward his weapon. Ghost and Smoke rose to their feet. The movement was synchronized, predatory. The message was clear. Whatever was about to happen, the wolves would be part of it. "We're not going to do anything stupid," Vera said, her voice calm, but now with a harder edge. "You're tired. You're stressed. You're making threats you haven't thought through." "Am I?" Ray's hand closed around the grip of his pistol. "Ray!" Cole's voice cut through the tension. "Stand down, Cole. She's gonna turn us in the second we leave. You know it. I told you. Stand down!" Cole hadn't raised his voice, but the command was absolute. Ray hesitated, then took a step back, his hand falling away from his gun. The moment passed, but something had shifted. They all felt it. The pretense of civilized coexistence had shattered, revealing the violence simmering beneath. Vera remained seated, but every muscle in her body was tense, ready. She had identified the primary threat now. Ray was the dangerous one, ruled by fear and anger instead of reason. Cole was smart enough to be cautious. Marcus was conflicted, and that made him unpredictable in his own way. The storm howled outside, trapping them all in a space that seemed to shrink with every passing hour. "I need to check my traps," Vera said, breaking the silence. "Or what's left of them." "You're not going anywhere," Ray snapped. "It's my property, I do what I want. Ray's right, Cole said, his tone more reasonable. I can't let you go out there. Not until we figure out what's going on. Vera rose slowly. Then we have a problem. Because I don't take kindly to being held prisoner in my own home. The words hung in the air, a line drawn in the sand. Before anyone could respond, Marcus cleared his throat nervously. Someone's coming, he said, pointing to the window. I saw movement just for a second, through the snow. Everyone froze. Cole went to the window and peered out. I don't see anything. I saw something, Marcus insisted. I swear. Vera joined Cole, staring out into the white vortex. Nothing but snow, wind, and the silhouettes of trees bending under the storm's assault. But a cold certainty settled in her stomach. Something had changed. The wolves felt it too. They had moved to the door, sniffing at the crack beneath it. Low growls rumbling in their throats. Could have been an animal, Cole said, but he didn't sound convinced. It could have been, Vera thought, but she didn't believe it. And from the look on Cole's face, neither did he. The storm had brought these three men to her door. Now she wondered what else might be hiding in the white darkness outside. The rest of the morning passed in a restless vigil. Whatever Marcus had seen, real or imagined, had put everyone on edge. It put Ray on watch at the window, while Cole began a more thorough search of Vera's belongings. She allowed it without protest, knowing he wouldn't find anything to help him. Everything of importance was either hidden or so commonplace it would be overlooked. When he found the satellite phone, her heart leaped before settling back into its steady rhythm. Cole held it up, his expression unreadable. Interesting thing for a hermit to have. Emergencies only. How often do you use it? Never. It's insurance. He turned the phone over in his hands, checking the battery level, the signal indicator. It's off. It's been off for months. The battery lasts longer that way. You could have called for help last night. Why didn't you? Vera looked him in the eye. Because in a storm like this, help is days away. And making that call would have guaranteed violence. I chose a different path. The smarter one. He slipped the phone into his pocket. We'll be holding on to this. Just in case. She didn't argue. The phone was a tool, nothing more. And she had never relied on tools alone for her survival. Marcus appeared at the door, stamping snow from his boots. He'd been checking the perimeter, despite Vera's warnings. His face was raw with cold, his hands trembling as he warmed them by the fire. Anything? Cole asked. Nothing. Just snow. Marcus accepted the coffee Vera offered, wrapping his fingers around the warm mug. Thanks. You should stay inside, Vera told him. In a storm like this, you can get lost to 10 feet from the door. People die that way. People die a lot of ways, Ray muttered from his post at the window. Marcus sat at the table, and in the lamplight, Vera studied him more closely. Up close, his youth was even more apparent. Smooth skin, uncertain eyes, the kind of lean build that came from genetics, not hardship. He didn't fit with the other two. How old are you? She asked quietly. He glanced at Cole, who was examining her supply shelves, then back to her. A bitter smile touched his lips. I feel a lot older. The last few days have aged me considerably. I imagine they have. She poured herself more coffee and sat opposite him. What's a kid like you doing with men like them? Marcus's jaw tightened. It's complicated. It always is. For a moment she thought he might tell her. But then Ray's sharp voice cut in from the window. Kid, stop chatting with the lady and get over here. Cole, you need to see this. They all moved to the window during a brief lull in the blizzard. Vera saw what had caught Ray's attention. Her shed, 50 yards out, its door unlatched and banging in the wind. It was locked this morning, Vera stated. You sure? Ray asked. Positive. I check it every night and every morning. It's routine. Cole's expression hardened. So either the wind. That door has a bolt I installed myself, Vera cut in. The wind didn't open it, which means someone else is out there. The four of them stood at the window, staring out into the storm. Ghost and Smoke had positioned themselves at Vera's side, their bodies taut, ears pricked. Could be we were followed, Ray said. Or it could be nothing, Marcus suggested hopefully. Maybe the latch broke. Maybe it wasn't secured properly. Vera said nothing. She was calculating distances, angles, sight lines. The shed held supplies she needed, but also things she didn't want them to find. Her cash was well stashed, but a thorough search would turn it up. I need to go close that door, she said. No. Cole's tone left no room for argument. Ray and I will check it out. Marcus, you stay here. Keep an eye on her. I know the layout, Vera protested. I know where everything is, what's supposed to be there and what isn't. You'll just waste time stumbling around. Cole considered this, then nodded reluctantly. Fine. But Ray goes with you. I'll stay here with Marcus. Any tricks, and the kid pays for it. Understood? Vera glanced at Marcus, saw the fear in his eyes, and made her decision. Understood. She pulled on her heavy wool and leather coat, wrapped a scarf across her face, and tugged on gloves she'd stitched herself from deerskin. Ray, in his inadequate city jacket, was already shivering. Stay close to me, Vera instructed. Grab my belt if you have to. The wind will try to separate us, and if you lose sight of me, you might not find your way back. Ray nodded, pride warring with practical fear on his face. Pride lost. He grabbed the back of her coat as she opened the door. The storm hit them like a physical force, stealing their breath and balance. Vera leaned into it, using techniques learned years ago in mountain warfare training. Short steps, steady progress, never fighting the wind directly, but flowing with and around it. The 50 yards to the shed felt like 50 miles. Ray stumbled twice, and twice Vera's sure-footed stance kept them both upright. By the time they reached the door, they were caked in snow and gasping. Vera pulled Ray inside and slammed the door shut. The sudden absence of wind was shocking. In the relative quiet, they could hear their own ragged breaths. Stay by the door, Vera said. Don't touch anything. But Ray was already looking around, taking inventory. The shed was larger than it looked, and neatly organized. Pelts hung along one wall. Tools were arrayed on another. Everything had its place, except for the disturbed snow near the back corner, where someone had clearly been standing. Vera knelt and examined the boot prints. Larger than hers. Larger than any of the three men's. Fresh. Not yet filled with the powder dusting in from the cracks in the walls. Someone's been in here, Ray said, coming up behind her. Recently, she confirmed. Who? I don't know. But that was a lie. She had a suspicion, a cold certainty taking shape in her mind. She stood and went to the back wall, where the floorboards were slightly raised. To a casual observer, it would look like shoddy construction. But Vera knew it was the false floor, and someone had come very close to finding it. What are you looking at? Ray asked. Storage, she said. For winter supplies. He didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes. But before he could press, they both heard it. A sound that cut through even the howling wind. The engine of a vehicle, somewhere in the distance, laboring against the storm. Ray's face went white. That's Dick. Who's Dick? Our ride out of here. We were supposed to meet him in town. But when the storm hit, he grabbed Vera's arm, his voice suddenly urgent. We have to get back to the cabin. Now. Why? If he's your ride, isn't that good news? Ray's expression was grim. Dick doesn't leave witnesses, and he definitely doesn't leave loose ends. If he finds you... He trailed off, realizing he'd said too much. But Vera understood perfectly. This Dick, whoever he was, represented a new level of danger. The men in her cabin, for all their posturing, were suddenly the least of her problems. They fought their way back through the storm, urgency overriding caution. When they burst through the cabin door, Cole looked up sharply. What happened? Dick's coming, Ray said, breathing hard. I heard his truck. Cole's expression shifted through relief, concern, calculation. When? Soon. Could be minutes. Could be an hour. Marcus's voice was strained. What do we tell him? About her? All three men looked at Vera. She stood in her own home, snow melting from her coat, and watched her fate being decided by strangers. We stick to the plan, Cole said finally. We tell him we found shelter. That's it? Ray demanded. He's going to want to know who lives here. So we tell him, Cole said. An old woman living alone. No threat. And when he wants to kill her anyway? Cole didn't answer. Marcus looked sick. Vera stood motionless, cataloging options, calculating probabilities. Outside, the distant sound of an engine grew closer, and with it, Vera knew, came a reckoning she had hoped to avoid, but had always known she would eventually have to face. The compass around her neck felt heavier than ever. Some paths, once taken, could never be truly left behind. They just waited out in the storm, patient and inevitable, until it was time to walk them again. The truck never arrived. They waited for an hour, then two, the tension rising like pressure behind a dam. Finally, Cole decided the storm must have turned whoever it was back, or that they'd heard an echo of something else. The machinery of a distant ranch, perhaps, or thunder disguised by the wind and snow. But Vera knew the truth. Someone was out there. Someone was watching. And whoever it was, they were patient. The afternoon bled into evening. The men grew restless, their confinement grating on their frayed nerves. Ray paced the length of the small cabin like a caged animal. Marcus sat at the table, head in his hands, lost in thoughts Vera could only guess at. Cole maintained a facade of control, but she saw the cracks beginning to form around the edges. Tell me about the robbery, Vera said, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. The three men looked at her with varying degrees of surprise. Why? Cole asked, his tone wary. Because we're stuck in here together, and I'm curious, and because talking is better than this. Ray let out a bitter laugh. You want to hear our confession? I want to understand, she said, her gaze steady. How a smart man like you, she nodded to Cole, a young kid like Marcus. She trailed off, then looked at Ray. And someone clearly experienced with violence ends up raiding a mountain cabin in the middle of a blizzard. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus lifted his head, his young face etched with grief. My brother has leukemia. He's 7. The treatment he needs, the real treatment, the one that can save him, isn't covered by insurance. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you robbed a bank, Vera stated, not with judgment, but as a simple fact. I robbed a bank. They helped, Marcus said, gesturing to Call and Ray. I couldn't have done it alone. I didn't have the skills or the nerve. How much did you get? 160,000, Call answered. His voice clipped. Should have been more, but the alarm went off early. We had to move fast. Someone got hurt. Silence descended again, thicker this time. Then Ray spoke, his voice a flat monotone. A security guard tried to be a hero. Call hit him harder than he meant to. Last we heard, he was in critical condition. Vera absorbed this. So you're not just running from a robbery charge. You could be facing a murder rap. We didn't want anyone to get hurt, Marcus said quickly, his voice cracking. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It never is. Vera stood and walked to the window. The storm still raged, a white fury clawing at the world outside. And Dick? Where does he fit in? He planned the job, Call admitted. Connected us, provided the gear, set up the escape route. We split the cash. He gets us to Canada. That was the deal. Except now he's out there somewhere in the storm, and you're in here with us. Vera turned to face them. Here's what I don't get. You're clearly intelligent, Call. You have a military background, leadership experience probably. You could have made different choices. Why this? Call's smile was bitter. Different choices require different options. I came back from overseas with skills the civilian world doesn't value and wounds it can't see. After a while, you use what you've got. Ray snorted. I'm good at hurting people. Always have been. Might as well get paid for it. It's honest, at least. Honesty is about all I've got left. Suddenly, Ghost lifted his head, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest. Smoke joined him, and the two dogs fixed their gaze on the door with predatory intensity. Everyone froze. Something's out there, Marcus whispered. This time, they all heard it. The crunch of footsteps in the snow, slow and deliberate, circling the cabin. It wasn't the random scuffling of an animal, but the measured tread of someone on reconnaissance. Call drew his weapon. Ray moved to the window, his own pistol ready. Marcus looked at Vera, his eyes wide with fear. How many doors? Call asked, his voice low. Just the one. The windows don't open from the outside. I made sure of that. So whoever it is, they have to come through the door if they want in. Yes. The footsteps continued their circuit. Once around the cabin, twice. On the third pass, they stopped directly in front of the door. Everyone held their breath. A knock. Not a demanding pound or a kick, but a simple, almost polite rap. 3 measured beats against the wood. A voice carried from outside, muffled by the wind and the thick timber, but clear enough to understand. My friends, I come in peace. Let us talk. The voice was male, middle-aged, with an accent Vera couldn't quite place. Not local, that was certain. And there was something in the tone, a chilling confidence that came from knowing you held all the cards. Call looked at Vera. You know this person? Never heard that voice in my life. Could be Dick, Ray suggested. Could be, Call agreed. He raised his voice. Who are you? Someone who is looking for something. Or rather, someone. May I come in? It's awfully cold out here. Vera's blood ran cold. She knew then, with absolute certainty, this wasn't about the robbery. This was about her, about the past she thought she had buried in these mountains, under all this snow. Tell him to go away, Marcus pleaded. But the voice outside spoke again, effortlessly switching languages. Russian. The words made Vera's hand tighten on her walking stick. Captain Karsov, it has been a long time. We have much to discuss. The name hung in the air like smoke. Call turned to look at Vera, a slow dawn of comprehension on his face. Karsov, he said slowly, the pieces clicking into place. Isn't that right? Vera didn't answer. She was calculating odds, weighing options, preparing for the violence that now seemed inevitable. The compass around her neck, with its Cyrillic markings, suddenly made a terrible kind of sense to everyone in the room. Ray leveled his gun at Vera, his hand trembling. Who the hell are you? Someone who made enemies, Vera said quietly. A long time ago in places far from here, Call finished for her. It wasn't a question. And they've found you. They've found me. The voice outside spoke again, back in English. I know you're not alone in there, Captain. I know about your new friends. This doesn't have to involve them. Send them out safely, and you and I can settle our affairs in private. Don't believe him, Vera said, her voice firm. Anyone who walks out that door will be dead in 10 paces. And if we stay? Marcus asked. We have a chance. A small one, but better than none. Call made a decision. He lowered his weapon and turned fully to Vera. We need to work together now. Whatever the truth is, we have a common enemy on the other side of that door. So, you tell me, who is that man and what does he want? Vera met his eyes and saw the intelligence there, the tactical mind that had likely kept him alive through more than one combat tour. He was right. The dynamic had shifted completely. The three criminals who had invaded her home were now her allies, whether they liked it or not. His name is Sulov, she said. He's with Russian intelligence, and what he wants is me dead. Why? Because 15 years ago, I let someone live that his government wanted dead, and in doing so, I became the target. The implications settled over the room. Ray slowly lowered his gun. Marcus glanced from Vera to the door and back again. Call nodded slowly, a soldier acknowledging another soldier's burden. How many men will he have with him? At least 2 others, probably 4. He never works alone. What's their training level? Professional, likely special forces. He recruits the best. So we're outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in a wooden cabin with a single door, Call summarized, a grim smile touching his lips. I've survived worse. Have you? Once in Kandahar, but it was a near thing. The voice outside called again. Captain Karsov, my patience is wearing thin. You have 2 minutes to respond before I am forced to take measures you will not enjoy. Vera moved to her hiding spot, a loose floorboard near her cot. She pried up the panel, revealing what she had kept concealed from her temporary captors. Weapons, ammunition, tactical gear she had hoped never to use again. She pulled out a shotgun, a handgun, and extra magazines. She handed the shotgun to Call, who took it with the familiar ease of someone who had carried one for years. Now we have a chance, she said. Now we have a chance, Call agreed. And as Sulov's deadline ticked away in the stormy twilight, 4 people who should have been enemies prepared to fight together for their thesis. Sometimes, Vera thought, family isn't who you're born to or who you choose. Sometimes, it's just who's standing beside you when the door gets kicked in. The 2 minutes passed in tense silence. Then they heard the sound of footsteps moving away, fading back into the storm, but no one in the cabin relaxed. That was strategy, not surrender, Vera said, already checking the rifle Call had handed to Marcus, establishing fields of fire, mapping out the best angles of approach. We have maybe 10 minutes before the assault begins. How do you know? Marcus asked, his hands trembling as he held the unfamiliar weapon. Because it's what I would do. She adjusted his grip, showed him the safety. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Aim for center mass. Don't try for a headshot. You'll miss. Understand? He nodded, looking nauseous but determined. Ray had found a pistol in Vera's cache and was checking it with professional competence. You've got some nice gear here for someone who's supposed to be retired. Old habits, Vera said. Old lies, more like. But Ray's tone was less hostile now. Common enemies made for strange bedfellows. Call was at the window, studying the approaches to the cabin through the driving snow. Visibility is limited. That works both ways. They can't get a clear shot at us, but we can't see them coming either. Sulov will use the shed for cover, Vera said. Then he'll advance from there to the cabin. He's patient, methodical. He won't rush unless he's forced. So we'll force him. Call stepped back from the window. We need to change the equation. Right now, we're sitting ducks, waiting for them to choose the moment. We need to seize the initiative. How? Marcus asked. The shed, Vera said, understanding Call's thinking instantly. If we deny them that cover, force them to approach across open ground, we improve our odds. Call nodded. Can you make it to the shed from here without being seen in this storm? Maybe. It's 50 yards in near whiteout conditions. I'll go with you, Ray offered. 2 sets of eyes. Better chance of success. Vera studied him for a moment. Was it a genuine offer of help? Or a bid for escape? But she saw something in his eyes she recognized. The resigned acceptance that comes when survival demands you trust people you have no business trusting. What do we do when we get there? Ray asked. Vera's smile was grim. We burn it to the ground. Won't that signal our move? They already know we're not just going to sit here. This way, we control a variable. She grabbed a container of lamp oil and a box of matches. Fire is unpredictable in a storm, but that works in our favor. It creates confusion, obscures vision, forces them to adjust their plan. Call considered it, then nodded. Do it. Marcus and I will provide covering fire if needed. 3 shots. Pause. 3 shots. That's the signal you're coming back. Anything else and we assume you're compromised. Vera and Ray bundled up against the cold. This time the journey would be faster, more perilous. They had to assume Sulov's team was out there, watching, waiting. Ready? Vera asked. Ray took a deep breath and let it out in a plume of white. As I'll ever be. They opened the door to the fury of the storm. The wind had, if anything, intensified. Visibility was measured in feet, not yards. They moved together, Vera in the lead, Ray close behind, both hunched against the gale. Halfway to the shed, Vera raised a fist, a signal she hoped Ray would understand. He stopped. Through the swirling snow, she'd caught a glimpse of movement, a shape too regular to be natural, too deliberate to be an animal. One of Sulov's men, positioned between the cabin and the shed. She pointed. Ray nodded to show he'd seen him too. They were pinned down, caught in the open, with cover a long way off in either direction. The figure moved slowly through the storm, unaware of their presence, but scanning the area with professional thoroughness. Vera made a decision. She set down the lamp oil and drew the knife she kept strapped to her thigh. The blade was Russian steel, taken on a mission years ago, and it had saved her life more than once. She moved forward, using the wind and the driving snow as cover. Ray watched her go, understanding without words what she was about to do. He held his position, weapon ready to provide support if it came to that. Vera closed the distance in seconds. The figure resolved into a heavily geared man, moving with the careful deliberation of someone trained for this work. He never heard her approach. The knife found the gap between his tactical vest and helmet, and he went down without a sound. She dragged him into a shallow drift, made sure he was dead, then signaled for Ray to advance. He joined her, glanced at the body, then at Vera with a new, raw respect. "One down," she said, her voice barely a whisper against the wind. "How many more?" "At least 2, maybe 3. They reached the shed without further contact. Inside the shed, Vera moved with purpose, dousing the rough-hewn wooden walls and the stacks of cured pelts with lamp oil, anything that would catch a flame. Ray stood guard at the door, his weapon ready. "This'll bring 'em in like moths," Ray muttered. "That's the point," Vera thought. "Force their hand. Make them react, not plan." She struck a match, touching it to an oil-soaked rag. The fire took hold instantly, spreading with a voracious hunger. They were out the door just as smoke began to billow from the shed's eaves. The storm caught the plume, twisting it into ghostly shapes that bled into the swirling snow. Within minutes, the entire shed was a roaring inferno, its flames fighting against the wind and snow, winning through sheer intensity. They sprinted for the cabin. Stealth was no longer a concern. Speed was everything. Behind them, shouts in Russian tore through the blizzard. Sokolov's men were reacting to the fire, to the loss of their teammate, to the sudden shift in the fight. A shot ripped through the wind. Snow kicked up 5 feet to Vera's left. She didn't slow, trusting speed and the poor visibility to keep her alive. Ray returned fire blindly, not aiming to hit, but to force their pursuers to take cover. 30 yards to the cabin. 20. The door flew open. Cole laid down covering fire. Disciplined, 3 round bursts that sent figures scrambling in the storm behind them. Vera and Ray dove through the doorway, rolling into defensive stances as Cole slammed and bolted the door shut. "Success?" Cole asked. "The shed is burning, and they're 1 man down," Vera reported, her breath ragged. "Ours or theirs?" "Theirs." Cole allowed himself a small, grim smile. "Good start." Marcus was still at his post by the window, rifle gripped tight but pointed in the right direction. "They're moving. I see silhouettes, through the smoke and snow." "How many?" 2, maybe 3. It's hard to tell." Vera joined him, assessing the tactical situation. The burning shed created a churning, unpredictable wall of smoke and flame, rewriting the battlefield. Sokolov's team would have to adjust, to recalculate, and that bought the defenders precious time. "They'll either wait for the fire to die down," Vera mused, "or try to use it as cover for an assault. Either way, we bought ourselves time." A voice, amplified by a bullhorn or sheer training, cut through the storm. "Hayloft, subtlety abandoned. Captain Koff, you have made your position clear. You are still dangerous, still capable, but you are cornered. And we both know how this ends. Surrender now, and I promise your companions will be released." "He's lying," Ray said flatly. "Of course he's lying," Vera agreed. But he's also angry. We killed one of his men. This is personal now. It wasn't personal before? Cole asked. Before, it was business. Now, it's revenge. That makes him more dangerous, but also more predictable. The fire from the shed painted the snow in shades of amber and blood. In its flickering light, Vera could see figures moving. Two, definitely. Maybe a third, further back. Where's the fourth? She wondered aloud. As if in answer, something heavy thudded onto the roof. Footsteps, directly above them, moving toward the chimney. They're trying to block our chimney, Cole realized. Fill the cabin with smoke, force us out. It won't work, Vera said. The fireplace has a secondary flue, but it's going to get uncomfortable. Already thin wisps of smoke began to curl back down the hearth. Marcus coughed, his eyes watering. The dogs shifted restlessly, unhappy with the change in air quality. We need to take out that man on the roof, Ray said. I'll do it. Vera was already moving toward the door. Wait. Cole grabbed her arm. You go out alone, you're dead. They'll be expecting exactly that. So, what do you suggest? Cole thought for a second, then turned to Marcus. How good are you with that rifle? Not very, Marcus admitted. Doesn't matter. You're going to fire 3 shots out the window. Aim high. Don't try to hit anyone, just make noise and a distraction. Can you do that? Marcus nodded. Good. On my signal, Vera, Ray, and I will use that distraction to exit from different points. You two through the door, I'm going out the back window. We move fast, we coordinate, and we take down whoever is on that roof before they can box us in. Understood? It was a desperate plan, relying on speed and surprise more than skill, but desperation was all they had. Understood, they said in unison. Cole positioned himself at the small back window, testing if he could fit. It would be tight, but possible. Vera and Ray flanked the door, weapons raised. Gust and Smoke were ordered to stay, and they settled near Marcus, guarding the youngest member of their unexpected pack. On 3, Cole said. 1, 2, 3. Marcus fired, the shots deafening in the enclosed space. Instantly, Vera and Ray burst through the door, splitting left and right. Cole smashed through the window, glass shattering, his body barely clearing the frame. The man on the roof had just enough time to realize his mistake before Vera put 2 rounds into the shingles at his feet. He lost his footing, sliding down the snow-dusted roof with a cry. Ray was waiting when he hit the ground. Shots erupted from the storm. Sokolov's remaining men were returning fire, but they were too far away. The angles were bad, and the visibility was near zero. By the time they could acquire a target, all 3 defenders were already back inside. The door bolted, the broken window barricaded with furniture. They were 2 men down. And now Sokolov knew. He wasn't dealing with some retired hermit. He was dealing with a team that knew how to fight and was willing to kill. The blizzard raged on. The shed burned down to embers, and in the cabin, 4 people who had been strangers 2 days ago began to prepare for the final confrontation they all knew was coming. As Vera reloaded her weapon with practiced efficiency, she realized that somewhere in the chaos, she had stopped seeing Cole, Ray, and Marcus as threats. They had become something else. They had become her team. The assault never came. Hours crawled by with no movement outside but the steady march of the storm and the slow death of the fire. Now it was a waiting game, and Vera knew Sokolov was patient enough to wait forever if he had to. But their supplies wouldn't last forever. The air quality in the cabin was worsening from the partially blocked chimney, and the psychological pressure of waiting for violence was a war all its own. We can't just sit here. Marcus finally broke the silence. That's exactly what we do, Cole said. We wait for them to make a mistake. They're professionals, Vera reminded him. They don't make mistakes. Sokolov will wait until conditions shift in his favor. The storm passes. Our resources dwindle. Someone gets careless. Then he'll strike. Ray, who had been silent for an hour, stood up abruptly. There's another option. We use what they want against them. Explain, Cole said. They want Vera, specifically Vera. We give her to them. The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop. Marcus looked horrified. Cole's expression was carefully neutral. Vera remained perfectly still, watching Ray with the focus of a predator. Before everyone gets excited, Ray continued, I mean we pretend to give her to them. We set up a trade. Vera, for safe passage out. They come to collect her, we take them down. They won't buy it, Vera said. Sokolov knows me. He knows I wouldn't surrender. Then we make it convincing, Ray said, turning to her directly. We beat you up. Make it look like we're handing over a wounded prisoner who fought back. They'll think we turned on you to save our own skins. It was a terrible plan. It was also, Vera realized, potentially their best option. It won't work, Marcus protested. They'll just kill us all anyway. Maybe, Ray agreed. But we're dead anyway right now. This gives us a chance to choose the time, to control the ground. It's better than waiting for them to pick us apart. Cole studied Ray thoughtfully. You've done this before. Ambushes disguised as surrenders. 3 times in Iraq, Ray said, his voice quiet. Worked twice. The 3rd time. Well, why do you think I'm not in the army anymore? Vera stood and walked to the window. The storm was finally beginning to let up. She could see farther now, maybe 30 yards into the driving snow. That meant Sokolov could see better too. Time was running out. If we do this, she said slowly, we do it my way. I know Sokolov's tactics, his thinking. And there's something you all need to understand first. She went to her sleeping nook, pried loose a floorboard, and retrieved a metal box she kept hidden even from herself most days. She set it on the table and opened it. Inside were documents, photographs, and a set of dog tags that did not bear the name Vera Langley. My real name is Vera Clove, she said. Captain, U.S. Special Operations. I was a military contractor, running black ops in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, anywhere they needed someone deniable who could get results. She pulled out a photograph of herself, 20 years younger, standing with a tactical team. 5 of the faces were blacked out. Her face was clear, as was that of another man in his 30s, with hard eyes and an even harder smile. This is Sokolov, she said, tapping the unredacted face. 15 years ago, we worked together. Allied operations, shared intelligence. We were as close as people in our line of work get. What changed? Cole asked. Vera produced another photo. This one was of a young woman in her 20s, standing in front of what looked like a university building. Her name was Nadia Vulov, Russian national, a PhD candidate in political science. She uncovered proof of war crimes committed by her own government in Chechnya. She was preparing to go public, to testify before international courts. She set the photo down gently, as if it might break. I was ordered to eliminate her before she could talk. Make it look like an accident. That was my mission. Vera's voice was steady, but her hands had clenched into fists. I spent 2 weeks tracking her, learning her habits, finding the perfect opportunity. And in that time, I spent 3 days talking with her, finding out who she was. She wasn't a terrorist or a national security threat. She was a teacher who had found the truth and had the courage to speak it. So you let her go? Marcus asked, his voice soft. I let her go. I faked my mission report, claimed the target died in a staged car accident that looked natural. It worked for about 6 months. Then Nadia resurfaced. She testified, and the people I worked for, on both sides, realized I'd lied. Both sides? Ray asked. Turns out, I was being played. My superiors and Sokolovs were working together. Had been for years. The operations we were running weren't officially sanctioned by either government. We were a joint task force that technically didn't exist. We did the things both countries wanted done but couldn't officially order. The implication hung in the room like the cold, heavy snow outside. When they realized I'd let Nadia live, Vera continued, I became the target. They couldn't have an operative who put conscience above orders. I went underground, used old contacts to build a new identity, and eventually, I ended up here. I've been off the grid for 7 years, until now. Cole picked up the dog tags, reading the name stamped into the metal. Captain Vera Clove. How did Sokolov find you? I don't know for sure, she said, but I have a suspicion. She paused, fitting the last pieces of the puzzle together. She looked at Ray. You said you were waiting for D, that he was supposed to meet you in Timber Ridge. That's right. And he, Vera said, her gaze intense. Sokolov showed up right after your heist hit the news. She shook her head slowly. Not a coincidence. Put what together? Marcus asked. I go to Timber Ridge twice a year, for 7 years. Always the same months. Always to trade pelts. It's a pattern, and Sokolov is good at finding patterns. He probably had alerts set up for any unusual activity in remote mountain towns across a dozen states. Your heist gave him the excuse to come here and check. Her eyes locked on Ray's. And your friend D, he probably gave him more than an excuse. Ray's eyes narrowed. Do you think D is working for Sokolov? I think D was approached by someone who offered him money for information. For who else was in the area? I think he betrayed you without ever understanding what he was selling. A radio crackled to life. The satellite phone Cole had confiscated, apparently still holding a charge. Sulov's voice came through, clear and cold. Captain Clove, I know you're listening. Let me explain your situation plainly. You are cornered. Your supplies are limited. When this storm breaks, which it will by dawn, I will have a clear line of sight, and this siege will end, one way or another. But I am willing to offer terms. Vera grabbed the phone and keyed the transmit button. I'm listening. Come out alone, unarmed. Your companions will be released. I have no interest in them. They are merely criminals on the run from a botched robbery. You are the only one I want. And if I refuse, then everyone dies, including the wolves you've grown so fond of. I know about Ghost and Smoke, Vera. I have been watching for longer than you can possibly imagine. The casual mention of her dog's names sent a chill of ice through Vera's blood. He must have been observing her for days, weeks even, before the robbery gave him the excuse he needed to act. How long? She asked, her voice tight. Where have you been? 3 months. I have been patient, waiting for the right opportunity. Your little criminals provided it. Now my patience has run out. You have until dawn to decide. Come out and face justice, or watch everyone you've tried to protect die first. The transmission cut out. In the ensuing silence, the four people in the cabin looked at one another. The entire dynamic had shifted. This was no longer about a robbery. This was no longer about strangers thrown together by circumstance. This was about old sins, old debts, and the long reach of past decisions. "I'll go," Vera said finally. "At dawn. Alone. He'll keep his word about letting you go. You aren't important enough for him to risk his mission over." "No." Marcus's voice was firm, surprising them all. "You saved us. You could have let us freeze or called the authorities, but you gave us shelter. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for us." "It's not your choice to make," Vera said softly. "Actually," Cole interjected, "it is. Because Ray's plan just got better. We now know Sokolov's deadline, his expectations, his positioning. We're going to use it. We'll make the trade, but on our terms. And this time we finish it." Vera looked at him and saw the resolve there. The soldier who had learned that sometimes the only way out is through. "This could get you all killed," she warned. "Doing nothing will too," Ray pointed out. "So will running," Marcus added. Cole picked up his rifle, checking the magazine. "We're already in it, Vera. Might as well see it to the end. Besides, I'm tired of being hunted. It's time we did the hunting." And looking at these three men, criminals who had broken into her home with violent intent, Vera felt something she hadn't felt in 7 years of isolation. She felt like part of a team again, like she had people worth fighting for, like she had a family. "All right," she said. "Then here's what we're going to do." And as the dawn crept closer and the storm finally began to break, 4 people planned their assault on an enemy who thought he had already won. Sometimes, the best weapon isn't the one you carry. The dawn arrived, gray and exhausted. The storm had finally released its grip on the mountains. Visibility improved to 100 yards, then 200. The burned-out remains of the shed smoldered in the pale light, a dark scar against the pristine snow. Vera stood at the window, watching the world emerge from white chaos into a cold clarity. Beside her, Cole studied the terrain with tactical precision, noting angles and distances, identifying cover and concealment. Ray and Marcus prepped their gear, working with the silent intensity of men who knew their lives depended on the details. "They'll be watching from 3 positions," Vera said, gesturing toward the tree line. There, and likely that rise to the north. Sokolov will position himself with the best overview. That's the north rise. That's where he'll expect me to walk, and that's where we'll hit him." Cole nodded. "If we're going to get into position unseen, that's where Ghost and Smoke come in." He looked at the 2 wolf dogs, who sat alert and watchful, as if they understood the gravity of what was coming. "You said they were trained to track. Can they follow a scent in these conditions? Do they understand hand signals? Can they operate independently? Can they identify and hold a target?" Vera hesitated. "I've never asked them to attack a person. They're protectors, but I never trained them for military work." A grim look crossed her face. "Maybe it's time we find out if they remember their ancestors' instincts." Ray came over carrying a bundle wrapped in dark cloth. "Found some of your old gear in that cache. Tactical vest, night vision that still works, comms equipment. This is professional-grade military hardware. You weren't kidding about your past." Vera took the vest, feeling its familiar weight. She hadn't worn it in 7 years. She had hoped to never need it again. The fabric still smelled faintly of gun oil and old smoke, memories stitched into every seam. "There's this too," Ray said, pulling out a small device. A dead drop beacon. Looks like it still has a charge. What's it for? Vera's expression hardened. Emergency extraction. If I activated that, a team would arrive in 12 hours to pull me out, but they would also eliminate anyone who knew my location. Protocol to protect a deep cover agent. So, we can't use it. I won't use it. Not unless there's no other choice. She set the beacon aside and began checking the vest's pouches. Everything was still there, preserved by oilcloth and the dry conditions. Magazines, a medical kit, a backup knife, even a small signaling mirror. Marcus came over, looking nervous. I was thinking about the plan. When you go out there pretending to surrender, what if Sokolov just shoots you? What if he doesn't want to talk? He'll want to talk, Vera said with certainty. Sokolov is a professional, but he's also proud. He's been hunting me for 15 years. He will want me to know that he's won. He'll need me to acknowledge it. That pride is his weakness, Cole said, and we're going to exploit it. He'll be focused on Vera, on the satisfaction of finally capturing his target. That tunnel vision gives us our opening. The plan was simple, which made it both elegant and terrifying. Vera would walk out at the appointed time, hands in sight, seemingly surrendering. Sokolov would reveal his position when he called out to her. At that moment, ghost and smoke would be released to create chaos. In that chaos, Cole, Ray, and Marcus would advance on the revealed positions, using the wolves' attack as both a distraction and a tactical advantage. It required precise timing, absolute trust, and a healthy dose of luck. There's one more thing we need to discuss, Vera said, gathering them around the table. If this goes wrong, if Sokolov kills me and you survive, you need to know what to do. Nothing's going to go wrong, Marcus said firmly. But if it does, Vera took a slip of paper and wrote quickly. These are coordinates. There's a cache 5 miles north of here marked by 3 stacked stones with a red cloth tied to the top one. Inside is cash, clean documents, and contacts who can help you disappear properly. Enough to get you to Canada and start over. She folded the paper and handed it to Cole. Promise me, if I don't make it, you'll get Marcus there. Give him a chance at a real life. One that isn't spent looking over his shoulder. Cole took the paper and met her gaze. I promise. But we're all walking out of this. Your optimism is noted. It's not optimism, it's stubbornness. I've survived worse by refusing to die. It's worked so far, Ray chuckled, a sound of genuine humor. You know what's funny? Marcus said. 3 days ago I would have killed you without a second thought if Cole had given the order. Now, I'm about to risk my life fighting alongside you. It's not funny, Vera corrected quietly. It's fitting. You treated us like human beings when you had every right not to. That has to mean something. It means we got lucky, Ray amended. We could have broken into the cabin of someone who would have shot first. Instead, we found someone with a conscience. And a dangerous past with enemies hunting her, Vera reminded him. Still better than being dead in a ditch, which is where we'd be without your shelter. The conversation fell silent, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the sun was climbing higher, burning away the last of the storm clouds. It was almost time. Vera knelt beside Ghost and Smoke, running her hands through their thick fur. They leaned into her touch, trusting and calm. She had raised them from the brink of death, given them purpose and protection. Now she was about to ask them to fight, possibly to die, for strangers. I'm sorry, she whispered to them in Russian, the language of her childhood, of her truest self. I am so sorry. to bring you into this. Ghost licked her hand, a gesture of affection and acceptance. Smoke pressed his head against her shoulder. They would do as she asked, because that's what family did. They protected their own. Cole glanced at his watch. 30 minutes until the appointed time. We should get into position. They picked up their weapons, checked their magazines and safeties one last time. Marcus looked pale but determined, his hands steady on his rifle. Ray moved with the easy economy of someone preparing for violence he'd committed many times before. Cole's expression was serene, almost peaceful, the calm of a soldier who had long ago made peace with mortality. Ray and I will take a wide loop to the east, Cole told her, reviewing the plan one last time. We'll use that dip in the terrain to get within 50 yards of Sokolov's suspected position. Marcus, you'll provide covering fire from the cabin window. Don't try to hit anyone. Just make them keep their heads down. And me? Vera asked, though she knew the answer. You walk toward Sokolov. Let him see you, hear you, believe he's won. When Ghost and Smoke go, you hit the dirt and roll left. We'll handle the rest. He gave a thin smile. Simple. The best plans usually are. They synchronized their watches, established fallback positions, and agreed on emergency signals. It was military planning, the kind Vera had done dozens of times in her former life. But this time, the stakes felt more personal. These weren't soldiers under her command. They were people she had accidentally come to care for in the compressed intimacy of shared danger. One more thing, Vera said. She took the compass from around her neck, the one with the Cyrillic markings that had guided her through missions, through escapes, and finally, to this mountain cabin. She held it out to Marcus. Take this. If we get separated, if things go completely sanctions, use it to navigate to the coordinates I gave Cole. Marcus took it, his expression reverent. Why me? Because you're young enough to start over, to make different choices, to have a life that isn't defined by the worst thing you've ever done. She smiled sadly. Someone gave me that chance once. I wasted it by staying angry and afraid. Don't make my mistake. We're all coming back, Marcus insisted. We're all coming back, Vera agreed, though she didn't entirely believe it. Cole and Ray moved to the door, checking their weapons a final time. We'll be in position in 20 minutes. When you see my signal, 3 flashes from a mirror. That's confirmation we're set. I'll be watching. They slipped out into the cold morning, 2 figures moving low and fast across the snow-covered ground. Within moments, they had vanished into the terrain, invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. Marcus took his position at the window, resting his rifle on the sill, sighting through the scope at imaginary targets. I've got movement in the trees to the northeast, about 200 yards out. One of Sokolov's men. He wants to be seen. He wants us to know we're being watched. Vera went to the opposite window and scanned the landscape. There, a glint of light from the northern rise. 3 mirror flashes. Cole's signal. They were ready. She shrugged on the tactical vest, feeling it settle onto her shoulders like an old friend she'd hoped never to see again. She checked her sidearm, confirmed her knife was secure in its sheath, and allowed herself one brief moment of doubt, of fear, of the very human desire to just run and keep running forever. Then she pushed it away and sank into the cold clarity of a combat mindset. This was what she had been trained for, what she had done for 15 years before her exile. The skills hadn't vanished. They had simply lain dormant. Now, she would need them once again. She moved to the door, Ghost and Smoke flanking her. They could sense the shift in her, the transition from wary survivor to active warrior. "When I give the order," she said in Russian, "find the man on the hill. Hold him. Don't let him hurt anyone. Do you understand?" Their attention was rapt, their focus absolute. They understood. Perhaps not the words, but the intent behind them. Vera opened the door and stepped into the morning light. The sun glinted off the fresh snow. The air was so cold it burned her lungs. She raised her hands above her head, walking slowly toward the northern rise where she knew Sokolov was waiting. Behind her, in the cabin, Marcus tracked her progress through his scope, a finger resting beside the trigger, ready to lay down cover fire. To her right and left, invisible against the terrain, Cole and Ray moved on the enemy positions they had identified. And in her heart, Vera carried the weight of 15 years on the run, of hiding, of pretending to be someone she was not. All of it was about to end, one way or another. "Sokolov," she shouted, her voice echoing across the snow. "I'm here. I'm tired of running. Let's end this." A figure rose on the northern hill, dark against the sky. Even at this distance, Vera could see the satisfaction in his posture. "Captain Clow," he called back. "Finally. I have waited so long for this moment." "Then don't waste it. Let's talk." She kept walking, each step bringing her closer to the confrontation that would decide everything. Behind her, Ghost and Smoke waited for the order they were born to follow. The game was afoot, and there was no stopping it now. Sokolov was silhouetted against the morning sky, a figure from Vera's past made real. 50, perhaps 55, with the lean build of a man who had kept himself combat-ready, despite the administrative duties and diplomatic cover. He held a rifle, pointed casually at the ground, but ready to be brought up in an instant. "Close enough!" he shouted, when Vera reached the midpoint between the cabin and the hill. "Stop there!" She stopped, hands still raised. At this distance, she could see his face clearly. Time had etched lines around his eyes, threaded silver through his dark hair, but the cold intelligence in his expression was unchanged. "You look well," he said. "The mountain life suits you. I had 7 years of peace. It's more than I expected. More than you deserved, some would say." He started down the hill toward her, his rifle now at the ready. "Nadia Volokov caused a lot of trouble for a lot of people. Some of them want compensation. Killing me seems ineffective. This isn't about compensation. It's about making an example of you. To show other agents that betraying trust, that letting conscience override orders, has consequences that never expire." Vera watched him approach, calculating distances and angles. He was 60 yards out now, 55. Behind him, she could see 2 other figures emerge from cover. His support team, now confident their target was apparently helpless in the open. "Where are your criminals?" Sokolov asked, stopping 10 yards away. Close enough to talk, far enough to react if she tried anything. "The cabin. They didn't want to be a part of this." "Smart of them. I'll let them go once we're finished. I'm a man of my word, unlike some." The implied insult hung between them. "You worked with me for 3 years," Vera said. "You know why I let Nadia go. She was an innocent, and the orders we were given were wrong. Would you have done the same?" "No," Sokolov said flatly. "I would have done my job. That is the difference between us, Vera. You thought you could judge the orders, pick and choose which missions aligned with your personal morality. I understood our purpose was to follow orders, not question them. especially when those orders were bad. Because someone has to be willing to do the hard things, the dark things, so that civilization can pretend its hands are clean. He shifted his rifle slightly. You were one of the best I ever worked with. You could have gone far, done great things. Instead, you threw it all away for a Russian school teacher who meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. She meant something to herself, to her students. A technicality. The truth. Truth. Sokolov offered a humorless smile. Truth is a luxury for people who don't have to make impossible choices. We lived in the places between truths, where survival was more important than justice. Movement in Vera's periphery. Cole and Ray settling into position, invisible to Sokolov but clear to her trained perception. It was almost time. So now what? Vera asked. You kill me. Claim justice has been served. Report back to your handlers with my death as proof you've tied up a loose end. Something like that. Something like that. Though I'll admit, a part of me will miss you. We were good together, Vera. We were killers together. There's a difference. Sokolov's expression hardened. I suppose there is. It's time to end this conversation. Any last words? Just one question. Did you ever wonder if we were the villains all along? He considered it seriously, something she had always appreciated about him. His willingness to engage with difficult questions, even when the answers wouldn't change his actions. Sometimes, he admitted. Late at night, when the vodka is running low and the memories are strong. But wondering doesn't change what we were, what we did. We can't undo those choices. No, Vera agreed. But we can stop making new ones we'll regret. She saw it then. The slight widening of his eyes, the dawning realization that this conversation had been a stalling tactic. He was fast, professionally trained, already raising the rifle. But Vera was faster, throwing herself to the ground and rolling left, just as she'd practiced 1,000 times in her former life. Sokolov's shot ripped through the morning air, tearing through the empty space where she'd been a second before. He adjusted, tracking her movement, his finger tightening on the triggers for a second shot. That's when Ghost and Smoke exploded from their hidden positions. 15 yards behind Vera, they had been belly-crawling through the snow, invisible in their winter coats, waiting for the command she'd given with a subtle hand signal disguised as an adjustment to her vest. Ghost hit Sokolov from the left, 140 pounds of muscle and fang, moving with predatory speed. Sokolov went down hard, his rifle flying from his hands. Smoke blew past him, targeting the nearest of his support team with the same devastating efficiency. Chaos erupted on the snowfield. Sokolov's men opened fire, but they were shooting at moving blurs, at targets that weaved and dodged with animal grace. From the cabin, Marcus laid down covering fire exactly as instructed, not trying to hit anyone, but forcing Sokolov's men to divide their attention. And from the flanks, Cole and Ray opened up with precision and discipline. Ray dropped one of Sokolov's men with 3 quick shots. Cole engaged the other, trading fire as he advanced to better cover. Vera rolled to her feet, drawing her sidearm in a smooth motion. Sokolov was struggling under the weight of Ghost, trying to shove the wolf dog off while reaching for the pistol on his belt. She covered the distance in seconds, kicked the pistol away, and pressed her own gun to his temple. "Ghost, off!" she ordered in Russian. The wolf dog instantly backed away, though he stayed close, a low growl rumbling in his chest, ready to re-engage if needed. Sokolov looked up at Vera, blood seeping from bite wounds on his shoulder and arm. Clever, he gasped. Very clever. Stay down, she commanded, or I'll let him finish what he started. Around them, the sounds of combat died down. Cole and Ray were advancing on the remaining enemy position. Smoke had returned to Vera's side, unharmed, but breathing hard. Marcus's covering fire had stopped. In less than 90 seconds, the carefully planned ambush Sokolov had taken months to prepare had been turned against him. The hunter had become the hunted. And Vera stood over the man who had chased her for 15 years, finally having the conversation they both knew was inevitable. It didn't have to be this way, she said softly. Yes, it did, Sokolov replied, defiant even in defeat. From the moment you let Nadia Volkov live, this was the only possible ending. And with that, 15 years of running came to an end, on a snowy mountain in Idaho, surrounded by strangers who had become allies and wolves who had become family. The fight ended with a final crack of gunfire, followed by a sudden silence. Cole's voice cut through the stillness. Clear. Target down. Ray emerged from cover, moving cautiously, weapon still raised. Got one alive here. Wounded, but stable. Vera kept her gun on Sokolov as she responded. Secure him. Marcus, what's your status? All clear from my position. Marcus's voice was a mixture of relief and disbelief. We did it. We actually did it. It's not over yet, Vera thought. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the larger questions remained. She looked down at Sokolov, who had stopped struggling and was now watching her with the weary acceptance of a man who always knew this was a possible outcome. Your shoulder needs medical attention, she observed clinically. I've had worse. I know. I was there for some of it. Cole and Ray approached, moving with the caution of professionals who knew a wounded enemy could be the most dangerous. Cole produced a pair of flex cuffs, securing Sokolov's hands behind his back with efficient movements. Ray did the same to their other captive, a young man not much older than Marcus, who looked terrified now that the adrenaline was wearing off. What do we do with them? Ray asked. It was the question Vera had been avoiding. In her old life, the answer would have been simple. Eliminate witnesses, sanitize the site, disappear. But she wasn't that person anymore. The choice she'd made with Nadia Volkov had changed her, fundamentally and irrevocably. We keep them alive, she said finally, and we call the authorities. Sokolov let out a pained, humorless laugh. The authorities? Captain Kosov? You're legally dead. The moment you reveal yourself, you'll be arrested for dozens of crimes I can name and hundreds I can't. Your bid for redemption dies with your freedom. Maybe, Vera agreed. But I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of running. If prison is the price for doing the right thing, then I'll pay it. Noble. Stupid, but noble. Sokolov winced as Cole tightened the restraints. For what it's worth, I respected you, even when I was hunting you. That's worth absolutely nothing, but I appreciate the sentiment. Marcus arrived from the cabin, Ghost and Smoke trotting behind him. The young man took in the scene. 2 prisoners, Cole and Ray standing guard, and Vera, her weapon finally lowered. He seemed to be truly comprehending for the first time what they had just survived. You okay? He asked Vera. She looked at Ghost, who was licking a small gash on his shoulder. The dogs are incredible. I've never seen anything move so fast. Vera knelt beside Ghost, examining the wound. Superficial. It'll heal. Smoke pressed against her other side, seeking the contact that confirmed pack and safety. They did well, better than I had any right to ask. Ray nudged Sokolov's boot without ceremony. So this is the big bad Russian who's been chasing you for 15 years. I expected someone more impressive. Careful, Vera warned. Sokolov is extremely dangerous. Don't let the situation fool you. Oh, I know he's dangerous, Ray said. Just saying, we took him down pretty efficiently for a bunch of amateurs. We're not amateurs, Cole corrected. We just haven't worked together before. There's a difference. The sun had fully risen now, burning away the last of the storm clouds to reveal a landscape transformed by snow. Beautiful and deadly, like everything else in these mountains. Vera stood, looked out at the horizon, and felt the weight of her decisions settle onto her shoulders. She took out the satellite phone, the one Cole had confiscated days ago. Her fingers hesitated over the power button. You're really going to do it? Ray asked. Turn yourself in? Yes. They'll lock you up, probably for life. After everything you did to stay free, to build this life, you're just going to throw it away? Vera considered the question, truly considered it. I'm not throwing it all away. I'm choosing what happens next. There's a difference. She powered on her phone, waiting for it to find a signal. Besides, she added, I'm tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of being someone I'm not. The phone chimed. Signal locked. She dialed a number she had memorized years ago, but had never used. A direct line to a federal office specializing in situations that fell outside normal legal boundaries. This is Captain Vera Kosov, she said, when a voice answered. Code name, Phantom. I'm calling to surrender and to report a Russian intelligence operation on U.S. soil. My coordinates are... She read the GPS location from the phone's display. The voice on the other end, professional, calm, likely recording her every word, asked her to hold the line. She agreed. Then she looked at Cole, Ray, and Marcus. You three need to leave now, before the authorities get here. What about the robbery? Marcus asked. The guard we hurt? Tell the truth. Turn yourselves in properly. Get lawyers. Take responsibility. You may do time, but you'll do it with your souls intact. That's worth more than you can imagine. Cole nodded slowly. The money you mentioned, the coordinates, is that offer still on the table? It's yours if you want it, Vera said. But I think you'll make the right choice. Ray extended a hand to Vera. After a moment, she shook it. His grip was firm, respectful. You're right, Vera Kosov, for what it's worth. And you're not so bad yourself for a violent felon. He smiled, a real smile. Then he turned and started walking toward the tree line. Cole followed, but Marcus hesitated. Thank you, the young man said, for everything, for treating us like people when you could have treated us like threats. We're all capable of being both, Vera replied. The trick is choosing which one we become. She watched them disappear into the trees. 3 men carrying stolen money and stolen time, heading toward whatever future they chose. Then she settled down to wait for the helicopters, which she could already hear in the distance, coming for her and the secrets she had carried for so long. The ghost smoke pressed against her sides, warm, solid, and loyal. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. And somehow, that made all the difference. 3 months later, spring was coming to the mountains with the same relentless determination winter had shown. The snow retreated to the highest peaks, revealing the brown and green of an earth remembering how to breathe. In the valleys below, Timber Ridge was preparing for the summer tourist season. painting weathered signs and pretending the town hadn't been at the center of an international incident, one that made national news for exactly a week before it was classified and forgotten. Ben Hollis stood behind the counter of his store, reading the letter that had arrived that morning. No return address, but a postmark from Virginia. He recognized the handwriting immediately. Ben. By the time you read this, you'll have heard the official story. Retired woman living in the mountains gets caught in a robbery gone wrong. The authorities sort it all out. Everybody goes home. That's the version they want told, and I won't contradict it. The truth is more complicated, as it usually is. I am not who I said I was, and the life I built in your mountains was on borrowed time. Now that the debt has come due, I'm paying it in ways I can't fully explain, but I wanted you to know that those 7 years were real. The person you knew, the one who traded pelts for coffee and lamp oil, she was real too. Maybe more real than I had been in a very long time. The ghost and the smoke are being looked after by someone who understands them. They are safe and will live out their lives somewhere not so different from where they were. I made sure of that, before I agreed to anything else. Thank you for your kindness, for not asking questions, for treating a stranger like a neighbor. Vera. Ben folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his shirt pocket. Outside the window, a black SUV with government plates was pulling up to the curb.